Good evening and welcome to this Across Lecture Series. The Across Lecture Series are a co-production between the Vlaams Architectuurinstituut, la Faculté d'Architectuur de l'Université de Liège, and A+ Architecture in Belgium. Tonight we are welcoming Jan de Moffarts and Steven Bosmans of ALTSTADT, a Brussels-based office. Across is not only a means to give a platform to young offices, but also to make a connection between those young offices and more established architects. And therefore, we are inviting tonight also Philippe van der Maren, who is going to give an introduction on the work of ALTSTADT. But before I give the floor to Philippe van der Maren, I would like to thank our structural partners, the Vlaamse overheid, la Fédération Wallonie-Bruxelles, and the Brussels Capital Region. I would also like to thank Dieter and Imo for the support of this lecture series. But now, ladies and gentlemen, Philippe van der Maren.
Avant de présenter ALTSTADT, je dois dire que j'ai été marqué par une des dernières phrases de la conférence précédente donnée par Mathieu Boussana, Sébastien Dachy. Timeless is the structure of the building. Pour moi, la transition parfaite avec le bureau ALTSTADT à présenter aujourd'hui, juste en rectifiant un peu la formule. Time is the structure of the building. Pour Jan de Moffarts, Steve Bosmans, travailler un projet, c'est effectivement travailler sur le temps. Celui qui est présent dans un nombre impressionnant de travaux de restauration de patrimoine qu'ils ont déjà réalisés ou projetés, mais aussi lorsqu'ils répondent à un projet sans histoire, ils s'y réfèrent. Jan de Moffarts et Steve Bosmans se sont associés il y a 3 ans pour devenir ALTSTADT. Ils se sont associés à un moment où chacun a réalisé un projet un peu charnière, à mon avis, dans leur parcours. Le parcours d'abord de Jan de Moffarts, jalonné par un passage à l'université de Gand, une spécialité en urbanisme, ensuite Stéphane Bale, origine, et puis la création de son bureau JDMA, apparu au moment de la rénovation de la gare maritime à Bruxelles. Toujours parmi les jalons, Jan a transformé la maison de ses parents il y a 4 ans, un petit projet typique pour la Belgique qui consiste à donner plus de surface et de lumière au rez-de-chaussée d'une maison mitoyenne. Un petit projet à l'échelle des réalisations de JDMA, mais qui contient pratiquement tous les thèmes développés au fur et à mesure de ses réalisations et collaborations. Il s'agit en fait de prolonger un sol, prolonger des murs et un plafond. Et ici, le principe de prolongement est réalisé par le choix des matériaux et des techniques. Réalise un sol en terrazzo, en continuité d'un terrazzo, un plafond mouluré en plâtre par un plafond en plâtre, mais avec une proposition de forme nouvelle, qui exige en fait la mise en valeur de chaque corps de métier, forme d'artisanat. Il va chercher une collaboration avec des corps de métier qui d'une certaine façon auraient été capables, ou qui auraient pu être ceux qui ont construit la maison d'origine, mais à qui il propose une autre forme, une sorte de même attitude pour une autre forme. Parmi tous les corps de métier, c'est aussi intéressant de voir comment il a collaboré avec une artiste justement sur le lien entre l'existant et le nouveau. L'artiste prend ici le rôle de trait d'union entre l'ancien et le nouveau. Pour présenter Steve Bosmans, il faudrait présenter Office Kersengeers David van Severen depuis ses débuts et les projets de concours et de réalisation sur lesquels il a travaillé. Là aussi, je suis intéressé par un petit projet qui jalonne son parcours, une maison à Duisburg. En réalité, la première collaboration entre Jan et Steven, un petit projet dans lequel tout se décline à partir de la mise en forme d'une toiture. Une toiture pour décrire une maison, une toiture pour résumer ce à quoi réfère la maison. C'est évidemment réducteur, mais c'est ce thème du shelter et de la couverture qui semble potentiellement devenir une réponse à la plupart de leurs projets. Voilà 2 architectes dont l'un s'intéresse à la redéfinition des contours du métier d'architecte et l'autre à la redéfinition des contours de l'architecture. C'est devenu une urgence de travailler avec l'existant et presque un délit de construire, et justement avec cette position de ALTSTADT qui sert de trait d'union entre 2 attitudes, sans intervenir, sans faire, pas juste refaire, mais faire avec. Comme ils n'ont pas encore beaucoup parlé, je suis curieux de les entendre.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jan de Moffarts, and my partner Steven Bosmans. I start thanking Lisa for this warm welcome, and Philippe, of course, Philippe van der Maren, who gave this fascinating lecture of our early work, let's say, our first projects. We thank him also for the nice interaction we had, the conversations about our practices and about the profession in general. We called our lecture Common Ground, and we will look at 10 of our projects from this angle. Common ground is what we look for every day. It's in the process of interaction with our clients, with our colleagues, with our friends, with all the people involved in the building process, in design process. But you could also see common ground as a metaphor for our projects. Like we want to build common ground, and you could read our project as a common ground. Another reflection is like we focus a lot on heritage. It's not the only thing we look at, but it's something that comes back very oftenly. And we see a tendency in beautiful architecture or in heritage that it tends to become public and common ground, in fact, which we find very beautiful. This force of valuable architecture to bring people together and to link past with the future and tell a story. I will go to the next slide. So actually we were supposed to give this lecture 1 year ago. Something came in between. But we don't mind because we had quite a good year. We had we produced a lot of work, and so we're very happy to share it with you tonight. Thank you also A+ for giving us this opportunity. It means a lot to us. So you see us here sitting 1 year ago, thinking of what to show. In the meantime, we grew a bit bigger. You see our team. And very important, we transformed from JDMA into ALTSTADT. JDMA it means Jan de Moffarts Architecten. It was a good name for a while when I was working on one project. But since Steven joined in 2018, it didn't cover what we do anymore. We also didn't want to present ourselves as names, but more as a studio or a team. And so from now on we are ALTSTADT. I won't explain that name. I think everybody will sure have some associations, and they're all right. First project, our first common project, 10 years ago, we built this villa we called Hill House for my niece. Yeah, this you see here the terrain. It was a villa on a hill, so Hill House. You see some first models. I think Philippe already explained quite good this project. With this roof that was kind of an important moment in the design process when we transformed the flat roof into a hyperbolic paraboloid. I say it right? Yeah. Which gives like 2 high points and 2 low points in the house. Yeah, we placed the house as deep as possible on the terrain, as deep as legally possible, let's say. So that it would be surrounded by the garden, and so that it touches the level, the high level of the hill for the living spaces. And so you have these 2 high points, the high point with a double high living room, and on the other side where we worked the house into the hill to have a duplex. And so the house is organized as kind of a spiral going through the living spaces, ending on the roof, like you see this staircase in the bathroom going through the roof skylight where you have then a terrace. You see here the facades, and then the inside promenade from the entrance with the bedrooms cantilevering over it. The bathroom is the end point, and then this double high living room, and on the other side you see the entrance with the bureau. And the roof terrace watching over the Tervuren landscape.
Yeah, the last project was in a way also way to find a common ground between what was legally possible and what we wanted to do. So we had to do a pitched roof, which we then somehow transformed, which usually makes very introverted volumes, but we turned inside out, and that was somehow accepted by the commune there. This project, Hangar Car, is another one which is a bit atypical, let's say, for our portfolio, because it's a new project and it's not at all in the kind of, let's say, old fabric of the city. In fact, it's at the Flemish Chaussee, so Steenweg, near Merchtem, and it somehow occupies the last lot there in the center, completely surrounded by industrial boxes and some leftover villas. So a very awkward but somehow typical context. Here we're looking at the site and we see this kind of giant pacifier in the baby clothes store and a villa across from it, and there are other showrooms. And this is in a way still agricultural land. And the client wanted to build, in fact, an industrial hangar, Hangar Car. But we were somehow, he was somehow intrigued by the other possibilities this terrain offered. And it was bizarre, but there's a line running diagonally, parallel with the road, through the terrain, which divides it from an industrial zone in the back, which has other rules than the housing zone with commercial functions in the front. So without wanting to somehow maximize the economic gain on the project, we try to make something that balances all these elements into one composition. And we came up with this, which is a series of 3 more or less identical boxes and a strip of housing on top. So the blue ones are industry, and the red ones commercials, and the yellow the housing. And by this geometry, there's somehow a kind of, let's say, peacefulness introduced in this chaotic context, we hope. And it also creates this kind of pockets for each program. At the front, it's parking spaces. At the back, it's more loading bays for the industrial halls. And the pocket at the left is, in a way, a private entrance for the housing. This evolved to this plan. You see that the boxes, we didn't manage to keep them really identical, but maybe that's not such an issue. They're really just empty spaces built with a very economical system. So it's just steel construction with concrete paneling above it. And this system is just continued into the layer of houses where there is all these rooms are built under a big span of 12 meters. So in a way, all these walls can move around, and you make this kind of multifunctional lofts which are connected with the gallery. And by their position, 7 meters above the ground, are looking over this context of the chaussee and to the fields which are just beyond that. The common ground here was also finding a way to work with this quite limited jargon of industrial elements. In fact, we only used a few concrete panels with a certain size in 2 different finishes, black and natural, and then garage gates and the steel structure, which you see here in yellow, which sometimes appears like here in the gallery. Not far from there, we were asked to make a renovation of this historical pastorie, a rectory, just next to the church in a small village. This pastorie was been abandoned for a few years, and is surrounded by this enormous lush garden, which we were told it was completely unimaginable to do interventions there. This is the front of the house, more or less. It's a historical photo, but it's more or less as we found it. And as you see, there was already an addition added to this pastorie. The clients also wanted an addition, and we somehow, we managed to negotiate that by demolishing this addition, we could somehow make a new one a bit further in the garden. So this is the house, remade to its original shape, and that will be the living house of the clients. And we made an extension, which will be the offices of the family that lives there, and it's positioned, as you see here, as a kind of side pavilion with a separate entrance, as much as possible to taking distance from the house. The idea was to keep it very modest. At the same time, we had to realize a certain size for it to fill its function, and we came up with this idea that maybe the rooms could start small at the front and somehow enlarge towards the back, and by taking a horizontal roof line, they would not only increase in size but also increase in height, so they become more and more spacious towards the end. This is an early sketch. You see that there is this idea of a kind of logarithmic change of the rooms, and this evolved in the end to a bit of a simpler plan, where these rooms are separated not by walls but like boxes, which contain all the necessary functions like kitchen, a toilet, fireplace, stair to the basement, and start at the front as a kind of small entrance zone, and it evolves to the end to a quite large and spacious office. This is the pavilion with the rectory next to it. And I forgot to mention, the clients had one requisite, and that was that the extension were to be made with a straw roof, a thatch roof, which we thought was a funny thing to ask, and at the same time kind of interesting. So we really made that into the face of the project. So what you see from the garden, and this is a collage from it, is mostly this roof, and then under it, quite subtly, the facade of the office. The roof itself is a construction out of oak. At the same time, it doesn't have the typical huge oak dimensions. So we worked quite hard with our engineer, Bollinger-Groman, to create something that really reduced the dimensions of it to the limit, with columns rising 6 meters high in the center, but only 10 by 10 in dimension. And then afterwards, the contractor, a specialized wood contractor from Liège, I think, Cine, took over and made very detailed drawings of every element of the pavilion. At the moment, it's under construction. This was a few weeks ago, where we see these porticos with these slender columns supporting the center of the roof. And this was actually today visiting the site where they're putting they're finishing the cantilever of the roof, and here you get already an idea of the space that it becomes.
I jumped to another project, an important project for us, the Gare Maritime, which we see as a new common space in Brussels, in a way, kind of a new kind of public space, let's say. But when we arrived there in 2015, it was a ruin. The water would pour in, metal pieces were falling from the ceiling. And it was already quite magical. You see here the circus school having their tent inside, but also outside it was hard to understand where this building came from, what had happened. what was the original intentions. And so we start to digging in archives, and we found all these beautiful postcards showing the grandeur it had. It's a good station. It was built in 1907 by the first railway company engineer from Brunel, Frederick Brunel, who it was at that time it was mainly engineers that were the main protagonists, and it was the high days of the Brussels trade and industrialization, Belgian economic revolution, let's say. And so they built this really fantastic palace, but it was just a goods station. The biggest goods station in Europe at the time, 40,000 square meters. You see there a picture how it worked inside. So trains would drive in and goods would be weighed, taxated, and continue their way over water with the canal or with horses on the roads or train. We also found in the archive of the client, in fact, this really fantastic original plans. There was this plan set of 103 beautiful handmade A0 plans with immense detail showing this refinement of the steel structure, completely ornamented in Art Nouveau motifs, what is really important for Brussels. Funny enough, we also found hundreds of plans documenting everything that went wrong with the building. There was 100 building campaigns by the NMBS, transforming the building into a kind of a technical shed. We found all these plans where they talk about removing the font ornaments or replacing the glass with undulated plates, or as you see here in these different plans, moving gates, closing off halls, etc. Then we found this original picture of the construction period in the city archive. We had this whole collection of original pictures, and this became our central concept, that we considered everything that happened after the original design. We considered it inferior, and we wanted to go back to this original state of this original composition, this original symmetry, the original materials, but without recreating all the ornaments that it used to have. Inside the hall, we decided, together with Nördlings, made the inside architecture, and we worked together with Bureau Bouwtechniek for the skin of the Gare Maritime. Inside, we decided to keep the central halls free of buildings, so that they would become kind of the identity of the Gare Maritime. Like you see the original dimensions of the building, you have a lot of original elements. And then we created kind of a grid organizing the Gare Maritime as a kind of a city, a covered city, with streets and squares and access. And we try to open up the Gare Maritime, which used to be kind of a treasury box, very secured, completely closed, into an open part of the city in which the tissue around would continue, the urban tissue around. Here in this slide you see these concepts translated into technical plans. You see we had to go look for the original stones we found on different places on site, or we recuperated stones in the demolition of to make the openings, etc. And this way we could recreate this original symmetry and materiality. The same goes for the side facades, where we had to find a way to. You see, they also encountered all kinds of interventions. They even built a hall next to it and broke these windows you used to have and made these large openings. We had to find a way to introduce all these new openings to make the Gare Maritime kind of porous and open. And so we entered it in the original composition of the windows on the first floor. We made these new openings, but in this gigantic thick wall of 80 centimeters, it would have been quite hard. This how you call that? Percement. So we took back these original form stones. We recreated the form stones they're used to make to negotiate between in and out, and to make it more soft the way the opening is inscribed into this thick wall of 80 centimeters. I go maybe a bit faster. The high facades and the roofs, there we found in archives how it worked, how they were composed, what was the rhythm, and we kind of took 2 or 3 models together to make a basic grid or module of 1.20 meters that would come back in facades and in roof plans, in roofs, in skylights, and would create kind of unity, and which would restore the the verticality, I mean, of the original steel structure. And this idea was also adapted in the inside volumes that were also modulated on the 1.20 meters grid, which created a beautiful harmony between new volumes and the existing building. In these new volumes, the skin of the station really became an important element, an import of the experience of these working spaces. I wanted to also talk about these ecological ambitions we had. So you see this console carrying the old gutters. They were all very damaged, and we recreated them. But so we found this shape very important, this Art Nouveau kind of ear shape. But we detached it thermically from the structure, so that the isolation line would be continuous in the new design. I go a bit faster. Some other details. It was in quite bad shape, the building. You see, we had to renovate all the bases of the columns, recuperating elements. And then the work starts. It started quite dark. We first had all these works of sandblasting the lead paint to paint the columns in a fireproof paint. But slowly but certainly the original quality of the hall started to reappear, like you see in that facade picture. Like the inside was as decorated as the outside, in fact. A lot of information was still under the ground, so the project grew every week. Here you see in the head facade, where we discovered in archive pictures that there was these ornaments in another color, these white plates on the facade. And we noticed there was still some left, so we did some research on it, and it turned out to be these terracotta panels that, since we had found some, we could reproduce. And this is one of the few ornaments that we remade, but that had a huge impact. Some other construction site pictures. It starts to get shape. The new buildings arriving, there we chose for wood, which is because of its ecologic value, of course. But also because it's so light, it didn't interfere with the existing foundations of the station, and it's a material that is assembled in incredible speed, which was also quite important in this project. And it articulates very well, or we like a lot, this relation of the old steel structure and then the wood, the CLT, that is used in the new constructions. You see these big skylights in front of the building. We needed for smoke evacuation, but also for light into the office plateaus, and also to avoid overheating. So you had all these openings in the roof that would correspond to openings in the facades, and that would will create a little wind that makes it very nice climate inside. I talked about all this natural stone we recuperated. We went looking on site. We reused stones that were placed on other places to recreate this layout of the park facade. Here we have the Picard facades, the side facades. And here you see us on almost last building, how you call it? Site visit, yeah. Like the green arrived, and today it's open. I recommend everybody to go. It's a fantastic place, and we really believe it's a special new kind of public space, covered public space that will welcome everybody around. And we also like a lot this interaction of old and new, as I said already. We like that this new construction create new relations with the heritage. Like suddenly you see this steel structure that is supposed to be 50 meters above you from very close, and you get this feeling with the arts and crafts of the time. That was the last slide of the Gare Maritime. I jumped to a project over the canal, the Cartier Channel. Project we did as a heritage expert with Christen Gantenbein and Office, Kirsten Heers and David van Severen. So we advised the team like we about the history of this building, the valuable elements. You see us here on the site visit, and yeah, very soon we found this image of the original hall empty as it was designed and first used as an automobile factory, and this became again a central theme in the design, and we came to the team with this analysis of what were the colors, how was it, how did it work, and we got these images back. It was really an interesting interchange where you see that the concepts we came up with to make this structure fireproof, for example, then became a feature in the design. Or systems that we discovered, like the original ventilation system that inspired us to make new systems in the same positions. So we like a lot this technical side of how to isolate valuable structures. And so we saw in this original picture that the original glass facade was kind of the image of modernity that they wanted to, with what they wanted to sell cars. In fact, it was a very important feature. And we proposed, and we thought it was a really great idea, to use the original T profiles as a kind of the structure of a new curtain wall with double glazing, and it would have on the one hand this original smoothness and softness, and on the other hand raise the comfort a lot. And we liked a lot this idea. Another theme that might seem not so important, which is the color scheme, we found quite important, and we saw all these traces that about the original color scheme that was a bit strange. Apparently, in fact, we found out that the building was used to be painted in the colors of the brand of Citroën, and when the brand was taken over, they repainted the building in the new colors of the new brand. And so, by just knowing how it was, we came up with what we thought it should be in the future, and we proposed that this white, which became kind of a quality and a known image of the Citroën building, was we kept that, but we went back to this brown chocolate curtain wall, and we chose petroleum blue for all the openings to make kind of visible the new function as a modern art museum. And this is then an end image with the waterfront, with the museum towers sticking through this big factory hall, like multifunctional public space, a bit like Cartier. Unfortunately, we lost that competition, but we won this one, the Floraliehal in Ghent. It's also a steel structure, a big hall, event hall, built for the World Fair in 1903. It's part of a larger complex with the Kuip, the SMAC, ICC, and the casino surrounding this Floralienhal. I will just talk about Floralienhal. It's again a space where you don't understand what the architects were thinking. It's completely closed, and so we digged again in the archives, discovering all these original intentions and beautiful design elements, like this ballroom that used to exist next door, which had this big stage opening towards the Floralienhal, the central skylight. And we think that, like, just by telling this story to the team, we start popping up these features of this quality that existed in previous phases, start to get their own life into the new design.
And with this, we kind of jump back to the site of the Gare Maritime. I think all the projects that Jan talked about were somehow about finding a new connection between the past and the present, and making revive the qualities of a structure in the present time, and are in a way very modest. And this is also an example of a super modest project, but also on a very modest scale, where it is much about just connecting two contexts with each other, and the architecture being a very thin line between them. It's at the Parc Tour and Taxis. This is an old picture of the Pont de Jubilé. Has nothing to do with the Parc de Jubilé. So the Pont de Jubilé crossing the railroads that become the Tour and Taxis area. This is a picture of the current situation. So on the south is the Tour and Taxis Park, designed by Bureau Bosmans, and then towards the north it becomes this kind of canyon, which is a series of small pocket parks, you could say, divided by bridges. And we work together with Landinzicht, who also designs two parks further, two bridges further the park. This little project, and the assignment said literally you have to replace this connection between the bridge and the park, which is now in the form of kind of scaffolding structure, very rickety and loud, and actually intended to be temporary, but it's already in place for 5 years. It's quite an interesting place there, because you have the presence of Park Farm, which has become a little community center, right? And also a place where there are workshops where you can get a drink. So kind of a little gathering place in Parc Tour and Taxis. And what we discovered is actually that we can solve this question not by designing a new connection, but rather by making the connection not necessary and just pulling the landscape with a slight alteration to the level of the bridge. That means that a lot of the budget that was actually intended to make a bridge somehow becomes free, and you can use it for other stuff. And we kind of borrowed a bit from the language of the parks around it, and we designed this small master plan, you could say, where each corner of a bridge is always connected to the park, either with a ramp or with a stair. And the stair is actually the only thing that we in the end still design. Landinzicht, we designed together with Landinzicht this series of paths, but in a way it will feel very natural and unpresent if we do it well. We also have this series of lateral connections in the form of steps, which is also a language that comes back in the next part. Here's a section that shows this difference of almost 9 meters, which we bridge by these lateral steps, which kind of replace all kinds of current informal passages which already exist. A picture of the model which we present for the competition, and another one looking towards Park Farm from the Parktour in taxis. Here is the actual intervention, the architectural intervention, a simple stair in a folded steel plate with concrete steps. And this is an image of the project, what it will look like looking from this stair over this newly connected place. In the next project, the intention is in a way similar, just to kind of connect 2 different worlds, but it's on the level of a single family house in Kuckelberg, where this is a picture of the site. It's somehow in the center of this block of row houses in a quite nice street close to the Basilique of Kuckelberg, where a lot of these houses have very deep and very lush gardens. This is our house, kind of 40s, quite beautiful, modern, maison de maître, you could say. But the back facade is in a way seems to be designed in a way completely unaware of the qualities of connecting to the garden. And our project actually consists of just adding a very thin extension to the back facade. Actually, it's about 1.80 meters wide, just enough to put in a small circular stair. And it functions as a connection between all these stories, and also as a kind of winter garden extension of the spaces. A view of the model where we try to make a composition where again a bit like the Pastorie pavilion, there is a play of geometries which starts really small and increases towards the top to these enormous sliding windows. And a view from inside, where you see that we have the intention to make these floors almost not there, like as a kind of lattice work, to make this connection between the stories where they will superimpose the kitchen, the living room, the offices, and the bedroom, all as a kind of vertical sequence of living to connect them, as much as possible. And here a view, laterally in the extension between old house and garden.
From a house in Kuckelberg, we go to a castle in the castle of Boeghout in the botanical garden of Meissen, a castle, former castle of Josephine Charlotte, the sister of Leopold II, and before that like a medieval stronghold and a hunting castle, but that before us became already public, common, and is now part of the visit or the public circuit in the botanical garden. We do this project with Nu Architectuuratelier and Archipelago, and our assignment is on one hand to build the restaurant of the botanical garden in the Pachthof, the old farm of the castle next to the castle, and then a conference center and public routing through the castle in the castle. Okay, here you see the present situation of the castle. intriguing when you first come there. Inside, sometimes a bit, a lot of the interior seems to have lost its relation to the historic castle. We start, of course, looking at the history of the castle. We found all these stages from a family house, stronghold, but what was always very important is this roofscape, this fantastic roofscape that was the identity of the castle in the park, and which disappeared. We dig further and we found this the last restoration phase. We wouldn't call it restoration anymore. The Régie des Bâtiments, they renovated the castle in the 90s or the 80s, took out the roofs to make public terraces there, and took out a lot of these original decorations. Our assignment is to make the castle accessible for these two programs, a MICE program and public routing. And so for that we strategically position 2 elevators that then disclose all levels of the castle, most levels of the castle, and end up in a pavilion on the roof that is kind of dialoguing with the landscape of the roof. You see some images. We think it's fantastic how on this roof, which it should have never happened to take off these roofs, but these nice terraces are there now, and it's a fantastic place where the mission and the team of the botanical garden come together with this castle, and where we want to create not just an observatory, but really a garden to meet and rest and sit. A model picture, and then this last picture. In fact, we hope to put back the roof, one of the main roof, in fact. But that's our long-term vision. We already proposed it in the composition as a long-term vision. We hoped maybe some funds would be found, but it's still possible. You will see. But there we proposed, in fact, to move the big hall in the first floor to the roof, so that it would benefit its fantastic outside spaces, and that the original circulation inside the castle on the first floor can be restored, with salons watching the park and gallery watching the courtyard.
Then we're at the last project of our little conference here. In the Maison de Peuple in Anderlecht. There's one known picture of the Maison de Peuple in Anderlecht, and it's this one. It's kind of a lesser known Maison de Peuple, I would say, and kind of a more modest one. It was located on this this central plot, which is kind of in a very hectic place in Anderlecht, squeezed between the canal and the Chaussée de Mons, and then with the railroad crossing. There's also trams, and then there's also a bus station there, all around this awkward round point. So a very busy place. Actually nowadays, what you see is this kind of industrial box, and we were intrigued by the competition brief, and that's why we inscribed, because apparently inside of this box there is the old salle de fête of this Maison de Peuple. Not a very decorated one, but actually a huge one, I would say, maybe as big as the Ancienne Belgique, with the only thing that somehow distinguishes it from another hall is the fact that there is this stage, even with the coulisses still present. But at some, it's been abandoned for a long time, and at a certain point get covered with metal sheeting and kind of forgotten about. This is a plan of what it once was. It evolved also quite a lot, but what you see is almost is a house at the front, then a salle de fête in the center, and then there is this whole series of ateliers, little menuiserie. We see a Verrières, all these kind of little manufactories, and it was this kind of vibe of the people that worked there also had a community there, and in a way organized their feasts there, and it was an old cooperation. And it's this vibe exactly that the client wanted to revive. So they want to create a Maison de Peuple, which is also not only a place with a cafe and some meeting rooms, but also with this salle de fête, but also with housing and with kind of place for industry. So ateliers, a brasserie they were thinking, and they were also inspired by the machinery of Nantes. Maybe some large machines could be created there and so forth. So quite an ambitious vision for a rather small budget. We worked together for this competition with our friends at West, who are in a way specialized in this kind of questions of doing a lot with not much. So that was very stimulating. At the front, this is the facade. It's still in place, but it's in a very bad state. And in a way, it was a very modest Maison de Peuple, not without any frills, and very to the point. Initially, so we see this hall in the center of the picture. Like a very tempting idea would be to kind of put all the program of the new program on the side of the plot and somehow create a very nice interior garden which divided all that. But we had the feeling that in this place this would not help the context, and we wanted to create some space on this very hectic urban situation by making a kind of parvis on the side of the Maison de Peuple. Here you see the drawing with the elephant, which we borrowed from the Machine de Nantes, and with a new kind of connecting building, which would somehow be parallel to the railroad, and create a kind of billboard structure that is the entrance to the Maison de Peuple, but at the same time the facade of it, maybe kind of vitrine and maybe even a screen for what happens behind it. It evolved a bit. We talked a lot, and in the end we toned it down a bit to a more down-to-earth intervention, more to the scale of the user, we would say, a kind of table building which connects the three main elements of the project. So on the right is the Maison de Peuple, a place with a bar, with some offices, with communal meeting rooms, and with some artists in residence. And in the center you have the salle de fête, and then on the left there is a mixed building with housing on top of ateliers. This table structure kind of connects all of these, and at the same time enables them by organizing the circulation, organizing the techniques, creating a kind of antichambre to the spaces behind it. The ateliers, which you see on the left, take over the structure of the salle de fête at a smaller scale, and create in between them a kind of garden, logistical garden, you could say, which can be used to hang out, but also to drive with trucks in. Here you see the different elements of the project next to each other. And then below it, the table structure, which is also really used as a table to put a few silos on, which is connected to this brasserie, to put like the elevator of the Maison de Peuple, to put the machines that ventilate the salle de fête. So kind of a practical roofscape. This is a view on the entrance between the Maison de Peuple and the salle de fête. So this becomes a kind of open lobby which gives out to this parvis. And this is a view from the model that our friends at West beautifully created. You see this kind of spievormige, I don't know the translation of
cake shape.
cake-shaped public space in front of it, which we can imagine the activities of the Maison de Peuple kind of spill out in. This is a view from the canal side, where there is also a public space, but a more down-to-earth one, where which is more used for loading and unloading in relation to this to the canal and the street in front of it, and has a housing on top overlooking this scene. A view of the Maison de Peuple looking from the round point with the cafe on the corner, and then this image, the frontal image at night, as the last slide of our show. So yeah, we don't know the results yet. We're still hoping. We saw that maybe we will know tonight. So, but we didn't dare to look. So that's it. Thank you. Maybe there's some time for questions now. I see that. Have you both studied heritage as well as architecture? Actually, not.
And me neither, in fact. I worked for Stefan Beel in Ghent. I did as a start, and every time we did competitions where there was heritage involved, we worked together with Origin, and so through the projects I noticed I felt really good in this context, designing in this context, and so at a certain point I jumped to the office of Origin, where I learned a lot about dealing with heritage.
Yeah, and I didn't study heritage, and I also have not really a practical, a special skill for it. But I see this project that we do together, where heritage is an important factor. I don't see it any different as a project without heritage. It's more about, I think, a kind of sensitivity to feel the context, which is in that case existing, and to make a project that's clear and to the point.
We have a second question. The emphasis of your projects is mainly on combining old and new. Is it a deliberate choice, or rather a path that you started to follow naturally? I guess it's both. For me, then at least. But we really wanted to show this project of Hangar Car, because we don't want to limit ourselves to heritage at all. We are mainly interested in designing and in creative processes. And of course, there is this problem in Belgium of a kind of a shortage of heritage experts. So we're asked quite a lot. And from one project indeed comes another. But I think with our twist to ALTSTADT, we also want to open our views.
Mm-hmm.
And third question?
Is every single project a new challenge in combining different materials, just like the combination of old and new is a different challenge each time? Wow, that's a complex one, I would say.
The combination of old and new is something that fascinates us a lot, and where we want to. It's kind of a Chinese jigsaw, no? Like with a situation with a lot of parameters, where you have to, especially in valuable contexts, find the only right design, only right solution in a way. And I'm intrigued by that kind of challenges. I don't know if I answered the question.
I also think that depends what you see as materials. Is it in a way, it's always about combining the ingredients of the project, and that can be literally materials, but for us it's often kind of sources of input. But with the pasterie, for instance, if there's suddenly the question to do a straw roof, then it's kind of interesting to see how you can make that work in the intention that you have for the project.
We only get kind of heritage questions, like this one. As architect, what is for you the hardest thing when you work on heritage or historical monuments? On the other side, the most easy or fun part of it?
That's a question.
Yeah, I think what I like about heritage is that it shows kind of the creativity and lots of it's kind of a condensation of an enormous amount of human energy and creativity. That's what I found really fun to work with it, and I also think that we used to have this phrase. Sitting on the back of the giant from Newton, I think. It was a way to, by knowing the past, you're already ahead of everybody that doesn't knows it, and it makes it much easier. Like you sit on the shoulders of the giant to look forward and to see the right way. So we like a lot to look for this continuity, the continuous. Story, because it goes much smoother between past and future. So let's say it's indeed the fun part.
Yeah, and the hard part, but also the fun part, is in a way that the project doesn't reveal itself. I mean, it's not known from the start. Like a lot gets discovered. Like this Jan gave a nice anthology of the whole sequence of choices in the Gare Maritime, and these things are just discovered and then have to be acted upon, and then in the building construction phase, that has to happen right away, and that's really challenging to come to a building site and discover something new every time.
That's the last question? Oh, no. Whoa, serious question.
Yeah.
You read it?
Having a real vision of the link between the past, the present, and the future, and having a strong sensibility for heritage. What is your view about the evolution and present situation of the Cartier Gare du Nord, where you are currently working?
Yeah, I have to admit that I don't know the plans for the Cartier du Nord. I mean, for the station at least. I think it's we're sitting here for a year now. Before we were sitting in the WTC Tower 2, where we also made a historic study for 51 and 4E, where there some really interesting things are happening, like they're mixing housing with office, with hotel, with all kinds of equipments for the Flemish government. So really transforming how the north area works, and what will happen with this building, which is also super intriguing. We liked it a lot to sit here, to have our offices here. We have to move. But I don't know what will happen with it. I hope it will be also a mixed program, trying to create a more layered part of the city. Nice work, thank you.
Questions?
Your work mainly on existing structures and in collaboration with other teams. How would you define your authorship then? Or are you, as anti-heroes, no longer interested in that notion? Who asked that? I forgot to say that the Floralian hall we do with 51 and 4E, who is sitting next to us in the offices, and new architects.
Defining, I think for the people we collaborate with, so the other offices, we share in a way the authorship. I would say, like for instance, the last project was made very much together and in constant discussion. And there are of course other collaborations where we have a more specific role. And then it's about finding, I think, kind of making the space for yourself to make specific intervention. I think the Castle of Boeghout is a good example where the collaboration is about the whole, but in the end we have the opportunity to somehow make this castle our site within the bigger site, and I think each collaboration is different in that sense.
And it's also, there is a lot of themes in which you can find design challenges. And some projects are so big, the Florialian Hall is a big project, and we like a lot this exchange, and we find enough space for creativity in this role of heritage advisor. But we do ask to sit on the design table always. If not, we are not interested. We really want to have this exchange with architects that we also find very interesting architects, and that's how we also challenge this our position in a project. That was the last question. Thanks a lot for all these wonderful questions and your attention.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again to the organizers, to Philippe, and also thanks to our team, who we haven't thanked actually, but we have a nice team of very talented people, and it's nice to have them around here or at their home.
A lot of others.
Indeed, yeah. Thank you.
And good evening.